Hello, and welcome back to the Argyle SMB Finance Leadership Forum, Scaling Finance Without Scaling Headcount. My name is Michael with Argyle. It's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our esteemed speaker. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page. Now, to ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Also, be sure to subscribe to Argyle on YouTube for exclusive access to all our past events. And now, without further delay, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Nayab Siddiqui, Chief Operating Officer with Zana Ventures, Inc., and Chief Financial Officer and Head of Strategy with Resi 360, Inc. We're excited to have Nayab with us for a keynote presentation titled Turning Financial Insight into Strategic Growth. Nayab, thank you so much for being here with us today. Welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks a lot for the presentation and for the introduction. So folks, today we are going to talk about a very important topic, which is turning financial insight into strategic growth. Without going into detail about my background, Michael has already talked about it. I'm right now working as Chief Operating Officer for Zana Ventures. Zana Ventures is a consulting company which provides business and financial services advisory across globe, and we help businesses grow globally. At the same time, we've got a company called Resi 360, where I'm as Chief Financial Officer and Head of Strategy. We are a technology company which operates a community platform. So whatever we are going to talk about right now is going to reflect back on whatever we are experiencing on day-to-day, both for our clients as well as for our own companies. So without going further into details, let me jump into the presentation itself. We've got 30 minutes for this presentation, and we'll leave around 5 to 6 minutes at the end for Q&A. We'll talk about any questions that you have, and I'll try to answer them in that short span of 5 minutes. So let me quickly jump into the presentation. So before we dive into the crux of what we are going to talk about, let me talk about a small case study, something that most of the finance professionals might have faced in their own careers, in their own companies. So let me talk about a real life scenario which I've seen personally. So we're going to talk about profitability drop observed during a review, a discovery moment during one of the quarterly reviews, which was done by the CFO. And while doing his review, what started as a standard financial analysis session became an unraveling 6.5 million margin erosion, which was observed by the CFO, which went undetected for the last couple of months. How did it happen? What was the issue? The issue was that the government changed some of the regulations. Based upon regulation, some of the products that we were importing, they applied some new duties on specific raw material categories, but the information never passed through or traveled through the operational workflows. It was the importance operationally handling everything, but the information never passed through. And what was the impact? The impact was the pricing department maintained the margins that no longer reflected reality. For 6 months, transactions kept, goods were being imported at an elevated price, at an elevated cost, with the new import duties applied, but nobody knew in the finance department, no flags raised. And what was the impact? Of course, the pricing department did not build this cost into their margins. Within 6 months, the company lost $5 million of its margin. What was the role of the finance team? The finance team was simply continuing to work throughout the year, throughout this period, with very high-level budgets and forecasts, which were built during the last budget cycle. And they were conducting a very high-level variance analysis throughout this period. and that being a small increase in one of the cost of one of the components, nobody even looked at it, and they left it as something immaterial at that point in time. So that was the background. So what changed? There was a new regulation where increased import duties for only certain components which were being imported from 4.2% to 8%. That was impacting the company's primary product line. That something happened, a small change somewhere in the regulation impacted the company big time, $6.5 million of EBITDA loss. What were the critical lessons learned from this particular case study or from this experience? Number one, data capture beyond compliance. So every regulatory change affecting cost should trigger impact analysis, but that never happened because there was an event. It was captured by the import department, but the import department was continuously operating as usual, considering that as a small change. But had this timely relate to the finance department, to the pricing department, they must have done some reduction. They must have increased the prices of their products, and that 6.5 million, which was lost by the company, could have been saved. And of course, as I said, no communication or even ad hoc communication was insufficient for critical financial information. Timely information relay was one of the most element over here. If that had happened, of course, there could have been a mandatory impact analysis. Had once the regulation changed, finance must immediately, model that into the P&L, find out what is the impact, what is the P&L impact, pass it over to the department. The department could have improved or increased their prices, and that loss could have been saved. The other thing is proactive operational knowledge. Now, the import department was working in their own silo. The pricing department was working in their silo, not knowing what's going on in the import department. They didn't have an operation that are going on over there, and likewise finance. So being the finance function, important learning was that finance should have a very thorough on the import department and how the operations, how those regulations could have impacted the work the finance must be doing, which is actually looking at the numbers and advising the manager to do remedial actions on timely basis. And last but not the least, of course, the financial real-time finance oversight, which was missing. Finance was simply sitting, doing their own budgeting and variance analysis, not looking deep into how business is changing and how those changes are going to impact the finance function as well as overall company performance. So a lot of breakdowns over here, a lot of issues over here by just one small change in the regulation. Who was at fault? Apparently nobody, because import department was doing its own operational work. Pricing didn't have any clue about any analysis and doing the historical versus budgets and forecast. So that's something which upon my presentation on this example. And that's the topic for our discussion today. Can we create strategic growth using financial insights? And that's the actual presentation. And as I said, I'll always try to go back to our example so that we can relate to that experience, and I'm sure. So first of all, is how can we use financial insights into strategic growth? Number one, we should have financial intelligence. And where is that financial intelligence coming from? That is coming from the hundreds of terabytes of information sitting in the organization. That's the raw financial data, which is available with every organization, but it is most of the time not being used. Most of the time, it's just given whenever there is a specific need, but not being used for financial intelligence. Secondly, strategic growth. Once we have that raw data available, what can we do with that raw data? We should turn that into meaningful information. Now we got data turn into meaningful information. What to do with that meaningful information? Of course, we need to use that meaningful information for strategic growth. But how? For that, we need to align our financial insights with the growth goals. If both of them are not aligned, the data remains in our repositories. Even the information which is created rest in some presentations, and it's not aligned with the strategic growth that we want to achieve. So which means data, information, alignment of information with our strategic growth initiatives or growth plans or goals of the company. While we are doing that, of course, we can't use all the data and just apply with on the growth initiatives or goals that the company has. Of course, there have to be guardrails on applying that data or that information. Those guardrails are basically the risk and the resilience we have when we are applying that information to our company. So anything that we do has got its own risks and rewards. So we need to leverage insights to manage risks and build long-term business resilience. That is one of the key component of usage of the financial data for our company growth. If we don't apply that, the company will go on a trajectory, but there are no glide. I'm sure that vehicle is or that vehicle is to have some accident at some point in time. Risk is very, very important. Risk mitigation is very important. And then once that happens, got the data, we've got the information, we've got goals alignment, we've got looking at the risks. But how to do that? We need to now look forward. We need to do predictive analytics, use predictive analytics to look at the future, how things are going to impact in future. Which means if I go back to our previous example, the example was if a regulatory change happens, how my predictions would change in future, how this would change, how can I predict that particular change will impact my financial outcomes going forward. So forecast outcomes using advanced financial modeling and historical data. That's next phase of the usage of financial insights for our growth, strategic growth. And then how to present that. Of course, I mean, if you've got all this information, we've got the role alignment, we've got the risk covered, we've got the predictive analytics done, how to present to the management. If the management doesn't understand all these jargons, all this complexity, it'd be very difficult to take a decision, which means detailization, presentation of complex information into clearly presented presentations or visualization. That's a very important aspect of using the financial insights. And then, once that is implemented, the management takes a decision. We need to look at performance metrics. How are we going to gauge our performance? Those are the KPIs that we need to identify. We need to identify and track financial indicators. Our KPIs, our growth progress, how we are doing in terms of our plans, how we are doing in terms of the goal settings that we did. So that's the overall overarching, planning to implementation to analysis of our financial data for financial growth or for the strategic growth of the company. Let me move over to the next item, which is why financial insights matter, why we are doing it. Every business has got a lot of hidden opportunities. Like going back to our example, there might be a number of opportunities where we don't even look at any cost element, we don't look at any potential, operational potential, we don't look at any business potential, and we keep doing business the way we do day in, day out. Why? Because those hidden opportunities are not being serviced with our data and with our information. So financial information and financial trends can help identify hidden opportunities. Once those hidden opportunities are identified, our financial data can also tell us about resource alignment. What are the opportunities to invest capital into? Where our talent should be deployed so that we can get the best ROI. If we don't do that, again, we'll just keep doing the same thing over and over again, and we'll not have the hidden opportunities untapped, we'll not have the resource alignment done accordingly. Then, once we've got the financial data available and financial information available, which we are going to use, and those insights we can use for smarter decisions. Which product to launch, which product to curtail, which market to enter into, what pricing to allocate, what are the different opportunities out there for acquisition, for long-term growth, for short-term growth, any organic opportunities, any inorganic opportunities. So all this happens once we've got complete, usable financial insights. And then, of course, we talked about risk mitigation. And of course, financial insights also help us with strategic agility. We can adapt quickly to market shifts. If we have got the right financial information on our tips, we can quickly adapt to the market shifts. We can quickly adapt our strategy to the new real-time financial insight, using the real-time financial insight, and looking at the way market is changing, regulation is changing, and our businesses are changing. And of course, that gives us competitive advantage. One company which doesn't have the information, which is not using its financial insight, would definitely be at loss as compared to the one which has got complete information, and the decision they are taking are informed decisions. But of course, easy said than done. Large enterprises, be it small enterprises, SMBs, or multinational companies, there is always resource scarcity. There are always teething issues. There are always silos. There are always problems, challenges that all these companies face. Life is not as simple as making a presentation and implementing that right away. And what are the key challenges that those companies are facing? Data complexity. Data available or data that we have may be having a lot of complex elements. Not a single organization, a large company or small companies. There are so many different functions. They're all working in silos. There might be inconsistent data. There might be different stream of data being captured in different ways, different programs. Agile decision making might be a problem. Organizations struggle with responding quickly enough to fast changing business conditions. So you have to be very, very agile to adopt what I've talked about in the last two slides. Market volatility is another aspect. We can do whatever we can internally, but of course we can't change the market ourselves. Market keep changing, trends keep changing, new technologies keep coming in, so which means those disruptors definitely have got a negative, sometimes a positive effect, but we have to keep abreast with the market volatility and market changes. And last but not the least, which is the biggest issue every company is facing, is the limit. We don't have limitless resources. They're always limited. We've got tight budgets. We've got competing priorities. We've got difficult investment decisions, and looking at different strategic initiatives. We have to choose one, and we have to curtail the others. So life is not as ideal as we talked on a slide. But again, we have to know about these challenges, and we have to tackle those challenges as we go along. Now, talking about financial insights, what are we looking at when financial insights? Those financial insights are some type descriptive, some type diagnostics, sometimes predictive, and sometimes prescriptive. And what are those? Descriptive is when our financial insights or data is summarized using historical financial data, including cash flows, trends, and drivers. So basically, they're just describing example by looking at the analysis. The CFO diagnosed, identified an issue, and then there was a deep digging where the diagnostic happens. So data is utilized to identify root causes behind financial performance and ROI metric variances. Once that happens, the third stage is predictive. It could be the data could predict, tell you about the future, tell you about what's going to happen. If the if and then scenario, the way if a certain change happens, how the business would react and should react. So it's predictive. And sometimes it's prescriptive as well, where we recommend optimal financial actions so that we can maximize growth. So descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. Okay, so what now? We've got this data available. We talked about uh, how we can use it for strategizing, or use it for strategizing our growth. How can we do that? Once we have the data, once we have the insight, how to use it for business growth. So let's talk about identifying growth levers. So what we need to do is we need to pinpoint high impact areas where financial data reveals untapped growth potential. So if we have those levers in front of us, we've got a handle of those levers, we'll be able to utilize financial insights and pave our way towards growth, or towards strategic growth. Of course, once we have the investment decisions, once we have this data, we can make better investment decisions. We can do better risk management. We can have strategic alignment. We can always do performance tracking, and we can do agile iteration. Most of the concepts we talked about, but just basically summing them up in one slide. Now, we talked about data, we talked about information, we talked about alignment, and we talked about agility as well. How could this all happen? There's always time lag. The regulation change happened, somebody read the regulation, somebody applied it operationally, the information happened through emails, through verbal communication, through documentation, whatsoever. But it always takes a little bit of time to. But we are living in an era where we are blessed with technology. So we should definitely leverage technology, which can amplify our insights, which can help you do things very, very quickly. And we can alleviate most of our issues, not all, most of our issues right now. And how can we do that? Technology can help us with advanced analytics. Technology, and specifically AI-powered insights. Now, machine learning uncovers hidden patterns. For instance, even in this particular case that we talked about, had this been all these new regulation might have been skimmed through or sifted through AI agent, passed over that information to the finance department. The finance could have quickly acted upon either through AI agents or through human intervention. So AI could have done intelligent automation. We can automate a lot of things. AI can do predictive fasting. We can have integrated platforms, operations working with pricing working with finance sitting in the core as a brain, and getting all this information where everything is integrated, and we can take active decisions. And then, of course, real-time dashboards. Management should look at real-time dashboards so that any anomalies, any decision making that needs to be done, that is done very, very quickly by the management. Okay, I'll try to be a bit faster, since we are running out of time. So this is the key slide. So once we have all this, once we have our data, once we have our insights, technology is being used to do that. How can we use this for strategic growth? We can use it for revenue growth. We can achieve year-over-year revenue increase through data-driven pricing strategy. Pricing was not done at the right time using the right information. Cost saving, we can save costs. We can compare information, internal information, external information. We can try to cost saves. do market expansion could be done. We can enter new markets. We can find out which country has got potential for our product. We can leverage for offshoring or nearshoring. We can make strategic decisions using this data. Risk mitigation could be done. Team alignment could be done. So all these financial insight help us with successful business transformation. I'll skip the slide. Basically, I've just talked about it. I'll go to the summary and then leave a few minutes for that we might have. So what is the summary and key takeaways? We should have financial insights. We need to use technology. We need to take advantage of technology available. Business needs to adapt new models based on insights which fuel long-term growth. And then based upon that, we take strategic actions. And the next steps are, of course, invest in capabilities and iterate strategies. It's not a one-time solution. This needs to have an iterative effect going forward. Anything which happens every day in, day out, the organization should be doing this, repeating this cycle, so that we've got a view on the future and we can pave our way towards growth. So I'll leave it over here. Let's move over to any question you might have, any questions, and I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Nayak, for an insightful keynote. We appreciate you. Now let's jump right into our questions. Now, where have you seen finance have the greatest influence on business outcomes when it partners more closely with other functions?
Okay, I think we talked about it. See, I mean, finance is, let me give you a very, very simple analogy. Finance is the brain of the body. Limbs, every limb is important, might be doing different actions. What does the brain do? The brain actually captures all the information, process all information, act upon that information, and transfer that information over to the right limb, so that that limb can operate the way it needs to operate. Right, the arms move, the tongue talks, and the legs walk. So this is how the organization is, just like a active human body. So I would say it would act as insightful, information and guide each and every function through their operation, so that the company can have can embark on progress.
Excellent, thank you. And our final question, how do you prioritize which financial insights deserve leadership attention when resources and bandwidth are limited?
Your voice was breaking a little bit, but what I'm understanding is that which financial function should have
Yeah, and I can repeat it again. How do you prioritize which financial insights deserve leadership attention when your resources and bandwidth are limited?
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so this is the toughest question and thing to answer. It's always prioritizing what is important for the company. There could be finance is always looking. That's why data-driven decision making is very important for an operation. The other day you might be talking about focusing more on market, implementing a new ERP or implementing an AI agent. It all depends upon the right kind of financial analysis is the management, that these are the 10 opportunities that you have, but according to us, according to finance, this is the right, these are the 3 top priorities that you should be looking at, and that recommendation should be supported by data, be based upon prior experience, based on likings or dislikes where finance may, plays that role, because they've got the data, they've got the insight, they should have the business understanding, which sometimes people lack, sometimes function lack. If we have that information and insight about the whole business, I think, the finance function would be in the right spot to leverage on that data, leverage upon that information, and advise the management to take the right decision at the right time.
Thank you. Nayab, thank you so much for this wonderful keynote. That's all the time we have for today. And I also want to thank everyone else for joining us. Finally, I would like to thank our sponsors, Avalara, SAP, and RAMP. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. This officially concludes the Argyle SMB Finance Leadership Forum, Scaling Finance Without Scaling Headcount. Thank you again for joining us today and engaging in our content. We look forward to seeing you at our next Argyle digital event soon, which will be our CIO Leadership Summit, Building the AI-Ready Enterprise Infrastructure, Workflows, and IT Operations on August 20th. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Nayab, thank you.